Hi, everyone, and welcome to this CPE webcast, Why the Post-Tax Season is the Perfect Time to Move Your Firm to the Cloud. Another tax season just wrapped up, and a lot of smaller tax firms are now looking back on what slowed them down, whether it's system crashes, limited remote access, hardware issues, or constantly troubleshooting outdated on-premise tax software. If these pain points sound familiar, then now is the right time to explore a move to a modern cloud-based tax platform. This 50-minute session is brought to you by CPAPracticeAdvisor.com and WoltersK, the makers of CCH Professional Tax and Accounting Solutions. You can find them at cch.com. I'm Isaac O'Bannon, Managing Editor of CPA Practice Advisor, and I'll be your moderator today. I've worked with technology, CPAs, and tax professionals for more than 25 years. CPA Practice Advisor was founded in 1991 and provides a variety of news, CPE, and other educational resources for tax and accounting pros. Before we get started, let me explain how you earn CPE on this webcast. The webcast is 50 minutes and qualifies for 1 credit of CPE in the field of information technology. To claim the CPE, you need to stay with us for the entire webcast. During the webcast, there will be 4 polling questions. In each poll, you need to record an answer. That's our verification that you're still engaged with the webcast. After the event, you'll be presented with a post-event survey evaluation form. Your CPE certificate will be sent to the email you used to register. During the session, you can ask questions in the field on your screen, and our speaker will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation, or she may answer them following in the Q&A. Questions not answered will be addressed by the speaker after, perhaps by email. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie Plaza, the Director of Product Management for WoltersK, where she has helped small firms optimize their efficiency for more than 15 years. And now we're ready to begin. Stephanie?
Thank you so much, Isaac. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Plaza, the Associate Director of Tax Product Management at WoltersK Tax and Accounting. I am super excited to be here today. And as Isaac said, I have been working with small firms in the tax and accounting space for the past 15 years and am incredibly passionate about helping those firms grow and achieve their business goals and help them adjust their priorities to make sure that they have a very successful tax season. Today, we're going to kind of walk through what the recent busy season revealed about your firm's workflows and technology limitations, and how higher performing firms approach these challenges a little bit differently. We're then going to focus on why the post-tax season window is ideal for evaluating cloud solutions and migrations, and outlines how firms can begin thinking about this migration, different levels of integrations, and next steps without rushing decisions. So before we jump fully in, we are going to go to our very first polling question, and Isaac is going to take that for us.
Thank you, Stephanie. The first question we have is, and this is ding, 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 one of your CPE questions. What was your firm's biggest technology challenge this year? Performance slowdowns or system access issues, manual data entry or rework, client document collection, workflow visibility and workload tracking, staff onboarding or permissions, or other? And as we wait for the results to come in, Stephanie, I see the earliest responses seem to be along the client document collection and certainly performance slowdowns, but we still have a lot of viewer responses coming in.
Well, the client document collection is kind of a problem that we've seen for many years, right? It's the shoebox issue. You have clients coming to you with varying degrees of documentation and kind of varying degrees as to how they've collected and shared that documentation with you. So it can, literally come to you in a shoebox, some email documentation, some will use portals. And so that is one of the biggest hiccups that we see in tax workflows is firms have a really hard time trying to standardize that process today.
Okay, it looks like we have most of our responses. So, Stephanie, why is post-tax season the time that matters?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So as we all know, busy season isn't just something that we have to survive, right? We can also use busy season as a diagnostic tool that a firm can use to kind of calibrate how they want their future busy seasons to look. During quieter periods of time, inefficient processes can be easy to tolerate. A manual workaround may not feel urgent, and a disconnected system may not seem like a major problem. But when we get into the throes of tax season, that volume really kind of exposes all of the bottlenecks within your workflow, right? The handoffs become more visible, delays start costing you and your firm money, and these systems that don't integrate with each other begin to create some real pressure within your firm. So that's why this post-tax season matters, right? The issues are fresh in your mind. You have a little bit of space, not a lot, we know, but you do have a little bit of time to step back and ask yourself, what's causing the friction within my firm today? Is it staffing issues? Is it workflow design? Is it technology? Or is it a lack of integration? And a lot of times it's not just one of those answers. It's not just one of those questions or issues. It can be a multitude of those and the way that kind of all of those issues and problems interact with each other. So this data shows that not every firm experiences busy season within the same way. We looked here specifically at two different types of firms and their issues during tax season. The first one are innovators, right? So innovators are those firms that are the most advanced with technology, right? They are adopting technology faster, they're integrating their systems across the tax workflow, et cetera. And then we also have kind of more mainstream tax firms. Mainstream firms, they take a more gradual approach to adopting new technologies. But as you can see here, firms that are kind of further along in that digital transformation are more likely to report improvement during the busy season. So this is a really huge statistic, right? 83% of innovators reported improvement compared with just less than 60% of mainstream firms. And what's important here is that this divide has nothing to do with firm size, right? So innovators aren't always large firms. These smaller firms can really operate in mature, integrated fashions, and larger firms can still have really fragmented and broken workflows. So the real difference is how these firms use their systems, and they use the integrated approach to workflows to help reduce the friction in their firms. And this really matters because busy season performance is tied to this operational design, right? It's not tied to how hard you or your team are working. It is tied to the technology that you're using today. So when we look at firms that had kind of more of a smoother season this year, there are several themes that we see. One is they communicate early and often with their clients. They also have more structured workflows. They adopt technology in ways that reduce bottlenecks, especially around things like manual work, document intake, right, which is kind of our number one problem that we've seen, review, and workload visibility. They also treated busy season as something that could be designed and managed, right? Not just endured. So they really had a mindset kind of shift when they're kind of preparing for these busy seasons. And they also had systems that help them kind of anticipate, route, prioritize, and manage the work. These improvements are easier when the systems that they use are integrated and accessible rather than tied to local machines or servers or Excel workbooks or even paper folders. Now, on the other side, firms that struggled tended to experience some more familiar patterns, right? Manual processes dominated that workflow. We like to call it kind of the swivel chair problem, right? You're sitting at your desk and you're doing one thing, and then all of a sudden you have a question and you have to move from your desk or turn or pick up a book or look at a prior year tax return. And it's not something that's integrated into your digital workflow. And so you're actually taking time, right? And you're reducing the efficiencies that the tax compliance software has built in. Additionally, there is a lot of kind of re-entered data that happens within a tax workflow. Also, documents have to be organized manually. Staff are relying on things like email, spreadsheets, and sometimes even just their memory to understand where things stand within that tax workflow and where the handoffs are occurring. These workflow gaps create delays, they create rework, and they're incredibly inefficient. And when you have limited technology integration, it means that your systems aren't sharing data, so your staff has to do all of the legwork, or you have to do it yourself. This creates that operational friction that we've talked about. And during the busy season, that friction compounds quickly. So one manual step that you're doing maybe in November doesn't feel like much, right? It's just kind of part of that workflow that you have. But when that same step repeats across hundreds or even sometimes thousands of returns during the spring busy season, it starts to become a capacity issue. It then becomes a quality issue and a staff issue. So many firms will kind of approach this busy season with the question like, okay, we know we have issues. How are we going to get through this? And I get that, right? Busy season can be very stressful and emotional. It's totally understandable to have a knee-jerk reaction to take that approach. But when you're looking at firms that are preparing themselves for the future, they're asking a very different question. They're asking, how do we make this predictable for next year? And that doesn't mean that your busy season becomes easy or simplifies. But what it does mean is that your firm can reduce that friction that is totally avoidable. You can start to plan for capacity. You can standardize processes and intake, and you can reduce manual work. In other words, if you treat busy season as a system, it can be improved before the pressure returns. And now we're just going to take a quick break, and I'm going to hand this over to Isaac for our next polling question.
Okay, CPE question alert. Question number 2, which area would have made the biggest difference in your most recent busy season? So you don't have to think back too far, just a little bit over a month ago, 2 or 3, and actually you still may be in the middle of it with extensions. But which of these areas? Better client intake and document collection, better workflow visibility, less manual data entry, easier remote or seasonal staff access, better integration between systems, or more automation? And if you have a different answer, go ahead and let us know in the question section below. So as we wait for the results to come in, and remember people, you do have to answer these questions to qualify for your CPE credit. Wow, so far, better client intake is certainly taking the top spot.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a theme here today, Isaac.
Yes, I've heard many, for years that getting clients to actually give you their stuff is always the hardest thing, but that's a client problem. But technology can also use that for both the firm and the clients.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a ton of options, right, to kind of standardize that process. There are digital organizers, there are collaboration tools that you can leverage. And when you start to think about this kind of client intake and document collection and the source documents, it's not always about chasing the client, right? Or it is about chasing the client, I should say. That's really where you start to reduce efficiencies in your firm. If you rely on technology for something like this, it automates the reminders that go to your client, right? So instead of you going through and checking the status of your hundreds or sometimes thousands of clients, you can automate that process so that if you're missing information from a client, a system takes that over for you, right? It sends out automatic push notifications or automatic emails. So that will save your firm time. So instead of chasing those clients, you're doing the valuable work and you're letting technology take that part over.
Let the tech chase the clients for you.
That's right. I mean, how many of us get all those emails and text messages for our doctor's appointments or our hair appointments or, our manicure appointments? So other industries, adopt very similar technologies and it's working.
Does WoltersK do the tax systems and the collection and client intake? Do they include SMS notifications or other kinds of notifications, text messaging, as well as of course, email? And
Yep. Yeah, tons of options to get in touch with your clients without kind of like a human intervention.
Okay, I think we're done receiving the answers. So what does moving to the cloud actually solve?
Yeah, so it solves a ton of things, right? Moving to the cloud is not about changing where your software is hosted, right? Although that is a big selling point for some firms, but it's really about solving specific operational problems that you may have in your firm today. So one of them would be if the issue is performance slowdowns, cloud infrastructure can provide a more scalable environment. If the issues are things like manual updates and maintenance periods, cloud platforms reduce that burden through automatic updates, meaning that you don't have to go in and take time out of your day to update your systems. That's all done behind the scenes for you. If the issue is remote access, you want to work from home or your employees want to work from home, cloud platforms can support that access from anywhere without having to log into a virtual machine or pay additional hosting fees for desktop solutions. And if the issue is kind of disconnected tools, right? Modern cloud platforms support integrations like APIs so that the data can move easily between the systems. The point here is that you can't just evaluate cloud like in the abstract, right? You need to evaluate it against the problems that your firm has and how you want to solve those. It's also really important to clarify that like not all cloud experiences are the same. So let's kind of talk about some of these differences here. Starting with on-premise or like desktop software, the firm is often responsible for that local infrastructure, right? Updating, like we just talked about, making sure that you have your backups, making sure that everybody has the access that they need, maintaining these systems. All of those things come at a price, and likely you don't have IT staff within your firm, so you have to hire out, right? Or you have to hire additional IT on top of the preparers that you have in your firm today. This desktop software can feel familiar, right? And that's kind of like what we all started on. We're all very familiar with that. We're all very comfortable with it. But it creates bottlenecks, especially during that busy season. When that busy season occurs, you need your teams to be flexible, and you need them to make sure that they have access wherever they're going to be. Now, let's move on and talk a little bit about hosting a desktop or an on-premise solution. So hosting will solve for that kind of like location flexibility that you need. So that means that your staff may be able to access desktop software remotely, like through a server or through that virtual environment, right? Like you can log into your desktop from home, but the hosted desktop often kind of preserves that same underlying workflow, right? So just because it solves where people can access, it doesn't solve how the work is going to flow through your systems. So just because you have a hosted tax compliance solution or a hosted research solution, there's still two different systems that don't have integrations because they are these desktop or on-premise solutions. So a true cloud platform is different because it's quite literally built for that online access. It's built for that scalability, and it is built most importantly for things like integration, dashboards, and real-time visibility. That distinction matters because the goal is not just to access the same workflow from somewhere else, right? The goal is to help move faster, cleaner, and with less friction. So let's take a look at the most common friction points busy season has exposed for our clients and probably for you as well, and why they often kind of trace back to these fragmented or broken systems. So I want to start first with onboarding, right? Staff onboarding is always really difficult. If you're hiring somebody right out of school, right, you have a lot of training to do with them. You have to get them up and running. And if you're hiring a more seasoned preparer, a lot of times, they could be coming from using a different software. And you want to make sure, first off, that you're not doing this onboarding during busy season, right? But sometimes you have to because firms need to add seasonal staff, sometimes even temporary support, remote contributors, or even brand new team members quickly in the height of it. When you have a fragmented environment, it means that you have to create logins, not in just one system, but in all of the systems that touch your workflow, right? So that could be sometimes up to 10 to 15 different systems that your admin, or you, if you are the admin, has to go in. They have to assign the permissions manually, and then they have to troubleshoot any access issues across all of these different tools. That time alone slows time, right? That takes away from productivity. It also creates security risks within your firm because you are more likely to have inconsistent permissions and workarounds. Everybody's under pressure. You're trying to get things done as quickly as possible, and you just introduce more human error when you have more systems that you have to maintain. When you have a more centralized approach to staff setup and unified access controls across, that can help you onboard people more consistently. It can reduce that administrative friction that we see, and it helps maintain stronger security standards. And this matters because capacity is not just about hiring people, right? You want to hire somebody, but you want to make sure the people you're hiring can become as productive as they can, as fast as possible. And so reducing the time it takes to get them onboarded is going to help your firm gain efficiencies and it's going to help your seasonal staff or your new workers get up and running faster. So capacity, this is something that we talk about all the time. And I think a few years ago, capacity was really highlighted as a staffing concern, right? We were seeing that there were less new graduates coming for the accounting industry, right? It was harder to hire people. Kids didn't want to work in accounting the way that accounting had worked before, which are 80, 100-hour long work weeks. They were really looking for a work-life balance, and that caused a lot of staffing concerns. But it's not just about staffing anymore, right? So if you look at this graphic here, the data that we're seeing shows that 70% of firms handled their increased workload by asking staff to work longer or more hours. And about 50% outsourced or used remote staff. Okay, great. So we're still trying to solve this capacity crunch with more people. And those strategies can help you in the short term, but they don't really solve that underlying issue, right? So if your systems don't reduce the work, you have to compensate with people. And that can mean more hours, more stress, more coordination, and obviously more of a risk of burnout, which is something that, we all face in the accounting industry. The larger point here is that capacity isn't just a staffing issue. It is a workflow and technology issue. The most sustainable capacity gains come from reducing unnecessary work, reducing rework, reducing manual work. That gain is not going to come from just throwing more people at the problem. You have to start adopting technology to help you get over some of those workflow gaps that you have in your firm today. There just aren't enough people anymore to get them all into your firm to help you. Now, we have seen this twice already within our polling questions, but one of the biggest pieces of friction, or sources of friction rather, that you are all seeing on this call today is disconnected client data, right? So it's not just getting the data, but it's getting the data and then it's getting it into your systems. So when you finally get that client information and it lives in multiple areas, staff are going to have to re-enter that same information more than once. So if you are preparing a tax return for Jane Smith, you have to make sure that her information is in your tax compliance software, her information is in your client portal, her information is in any sort of collaboration tool that you may have, her information is in a workflow tool that you may have, right? So like I said, 10 to 15 different software or tools that you might have where you're going to have to go in and create these clients. This obviously is going to create a delay, and it is going to create that risk because of all of the different systems. So during the busy season, that affects internal efficiency and also the client experience. Excuse me. So while staff may be kind of wasting time verifying information, correcting details, trying to determine what system is accurate, the client is waiting, right, for their engagement to be finished. So the goal here is a single source of truth for your client data, where the updates are going to flow across the workflow immediately, right? So if you update Jane's client profile in tax, it's going to flow through all of the pieces that touch your tax workflow automatically. This is why integration is so important, because it's not just about convenience, right? And it's not just about adopting technologies because they're flashy or you're hearing about it or everybody's talking about AI. It's about that speed. It's about consistency. It's about accuracy. And most importantly, it's about client trust. And so I have to apologize. I'm drinking a lot of water because I don't know where you guys are all located, but I'm in the Northeast and the allergies are crazy here. Inconsistent firm configuration breaks reporting, right? That sounds like a headline, doesn't it? But this issue happens all of the time, especially if your firm is growing, if you're adding offices or you're adding teams, or you're even operating within your practice, but you have maybe partners that have different preferences. So if you are using, or if your different teams within the firm are using different labels, statuses, engagement categories, or workflow steps, automatically your firm-wide reporting becomes totally unreliable because the statuses are not matching across the different teams, right? So you're going to have to go in and manually update all of those statuses. You're going to have to manually update all of the labels that they have done. So one team could classify a return in one way, and another team might use a different status, right? So one team may have a status as ready to review. Another team might be using ready to e-file. All of these things together are going to create a visibility problem. And a visibility problem is something that is going to cause pain points across your firm, because what you're going to have is you're going to have senior partners who are trying to come in, trying to identify risks, trying to get the status of clients, and there is not a standardized process for that today. So that is causing your teams to have to stop doing what they're doing, stop the work, to then manually adjust and create this reporting that is required to run the business, right? So a standardized list, standardized statuses, it doesn't mean that the teams have to work identically, right? It doesn't mean that we all have to abide by the same thing. But it means that your firm is going to have enough consistency so that the data can roll up accurately, and you as a leader or your partners can make decisions with confidence, right? This is essential during busy season when the leaders of the firm need to know what is at risk before these deadlines arrive, right? A lot of our job is risk mitigation. We can't always mitigate all risks, but we can identify them early, right? And we can get the mitigation done before those looming tax deadlines. Fragmentation can also create security and risk challenges. So we talked a little bit about the security of your client data when you're using these different kind of systems. We've also talked about the security of the access that the preparers or the workers in your firm have based off of, just human error and having to go through so many systems. But when you're using many applications, there are also separate passwords. There are separate policies for these. Every single one of them has their own master services agreement or end user license agreement. There are different update schedules and there are different access controls, right? So all of this is going to create additional complexity for your staff and for IT if you have it in your firm or if you outsource it. It also leads to things like workarounds, especially during busy season when everyone is moving quickly and trying to keep the work flowing. So when you are introducing these workarounds, especially kind of manual workarounds, it creates vulnerability within your firm. So all of these areas are going to introduce more and more risk into your firm. Now, if you don't have an IT staff or you're outsourcing IT, it also means that you have to outsource security as well. When you're looking at cloud solutions, right? A lot of those pieces can be taken off of your plate. So you want to look at a solution that is going to have kind of more of a consolidated approach for your firm. So things that have single sign-on, meaning you don't have to have multiple passwords across all of these different systems. Multi-factor authentication, right? So you get a text message or you get an email to confirm and authenticate who's actually accessing your system. And centralized updates, right? All of that is going to help reduce that complexity, and it's going to significantly improve your risk management. I think something that is really important here is that security is not separate from your workflow, right? We need to think about security across our entire tax workflow. In a modern firm, security access and efficient access need to work together. So what does a more connected firm really need today? There are kind of three areas here that we have highlighted. And the first one is something that we've talked about before, and that is connected visibility across systems, right? Leaders and managers need to see kind of where the work stands, how those deadlines are tracking, and where the resources are constrained. A connected platform like this is going to kind of protect any of those areas where risk is going to be brought forward because of the fractured kind of connections, or even the non-existent connections between those systems. The second one is the harmonized data, right? What does harmonized data mean? Data fragmentation is one of the biggest barriers to digital transformation, right? And that is that firms need a single source of truth for their clients. They need a single source of truth for their staff and firm configurations so that the teams aren't duplicating that work or relying on inconsistent information. The third is a cloud-first collaboration and security. This really just means simplifying access, enabling the follow the work collaboration, and using things like integrated platforms and APIs to connect the tools and automate the workflow. Together, these pillars are going to help you create the foundation for a more scalable and a more resilient firm. This is also the foundation for future capabilities, and we haven't gotten too much into this, but things like automation and AI, right? If your platforms, your solutions are not integrated, that means that you cannot force things like automation, and you can't leverage AI to help reduce the manual workarounds that you're doing, right? So their AI has a lot of agentic capabilities that are going to help kind of reduce the manual processes in the workflow. But if your systems aren't connected and aren't talking to each other, it doesn't matter if you're leveraging agentic AI in your document processing and leveraging agentic AI in tax, unless they are connected together, and you can take that connectivity across your whole tax workflow. Like I said, if the workflows are fragmented or even like the data is inconsistent, right? So we talked a little bit about that client setup. If your client setup in solution A doesn't mimic your client setup in solution B, any advanced tools that are doing automation or using agentic AI capabilities, they have less to work with because they can't kind of automatically connect those records together. So you're going to hear a little bit more about AI today, but it's not going to be the last time you hear it. And I'm certain it's not going to be the first time you hear about adopting AI in your firm. If that's something you're interested in, you really do need to have a connected platform to be able to reap the benefits of that. Otherwise, you're just using AI like ChatGPT. You can just use it for like advisory solutions and asking it questions and hoping that you get the right answers. But where you really want to focus in your tax practice is going to be on agentic AI. So what happens if you take the advice that I give you today, right, and you start bringing all of your workflow together? So what are the benefits of that? One is going to be client experience. And I do want to talk a little bit about client experience. One is we should all be kind of client or customer obsessed, right? Because that is who's paying our bills, right? That is why we are in business today. And I know that there is a lot of frustration around client behavior, especially when it comes to collecting the information that you need and communicating with them. But the more that we can do to leverage technology to help that, the better your client experience is going to be. And based off the goals of your firm, if you're looking to grow your firm, referral is still one of the fastest, easiest, and best ways to do that. So focus on that client experience. And when you focus on the client experience, it is going to help you improve leveraging that technology, because the communication becomes seamless, right? It's automated. So that means that response times are going to be faster from your firm, from your clients. And also it means that your staff is going to have better access to the client information that they need. So what does that mean in a real life scenario, right? Let's say your client drops off their source documents and they hand them to Betty, right? And then Betty goes to lunch. And John is working on the tax return and he needs the source documents because there's a deadline tomorrow. So he calls the client and the client says, well, I dropped them off today. I dropped them with Betty, but now Betty's not in the office. So John is now taking Betty's 45-minute lunch break and he's not able to get that tax return done because he can't locate the documents, right? If you're leveraging technology to collect that, your staff all has access to it. Everybody who has the correct permissions is going to have access to that, and it's going to help them do their job better. Number two is that security and risk management. Everybody here should be scared of security, right? It's a big thing. Cybersecurity is huge. There are different layers of security. That security and risk management piece is going to improve because of how you're going to store your document, because of how you're going to set up your permissions and your access controls, and even disaster recovery, meaning that if something happens to your location or something happens to your machine, right, you can always get that data back. And those things are handled consistently across the platform. Efficiency then improves because the repetitive tasks that you do can be automated, right? So leveraging AI, like I said, to help on some of those repetitive and manual tasks. And the teams can work from this centralized data. I mean, they're all working from the same point. Fourth is going to be your accuracy and your compliance are going to improve because there is less manual entry and less manual re-entry across different systems. So that means fewer disconnected records and better accountability or auditability through the firm. And then lastly, your roles within your firm can really evolve because it means that your tax professionals are going to spend less time doing kind of repetitive admin work or rework. And that's going to leave them to have more time to do more valuable things like review, analysis, planning, and advisory conversations, right? So it's bigger opportunity. Integration isn't just about operationalizing your firm and gaining efficiency. It's going to help you change what your firm can focus on if that's one of your goals. And before we move on, I am going to hand it over to Isaac for another polling question.
Okay, everybody, this is question number 3. And remember to record an answer for your CPE. Where would an integrated workflow have the biggest impact in your firm? Client intake, tax preparation and review, staff onboarding and access, reporting and workload visibility, security and permissions, or advisory and planning? And as we wait for responses, we can look at the very earliest. And what do you know? Client intake is up there, so is onboarding. As the rest of the results come in, we'll see some higher results there, of course.
Once again, not surprising. I do think it looks like coming up in a close second is tax preparation and review. And so that is that's obviously going to be a point of contention, right, within your tax practice is how do we gain efficiencies in the actual tax preparation, right? How do we move towards a low-touch tax return? And how do we rely on technology to help us do that? And so there are a lot of tools there, and it has been integral kind of in how we are approaching tax compliant software today and in the future.
Okay, so talk about how we can move from fragmented workflows to an AI-powered efficiency.
Absolutely. So I told you that we would be talking a little bit more about AI. So let's jump back into it, right? This slide shows the shift from, like we said, these fragmented workflows, what we're seeing today, to tomorrow's more connected, intelligent workflows, right? What does that mean? So in firms today, document collection, which we all know, is disconnected, right? Processes are compliance focused, which is great. We're a compliance business, but they're often built around Sally, which if you're not sure what that means, it's just same as last year, right? So that means that issues and changes can be identified late in the workflow, which is going to compress that review, and it's going to increase the pressure around deadlines. And then that also means that we have limited capacity for advisory work because so much of our time is being consumed by this compliance and administrative work. So what does the future look like, right? Document collection becomes smarter, solving for the number one problem we're hearing today. Data processing becomes more intelligent, right? Issues are identified earlier. Software is going to provide proactive insights rather than reaction, helping with tax planning. All of that means that the client experience is going to improve because the firm is going to be able to communicate with more context and less delays, right? The key point here is that AI-powered efficiency doesn't happen in isolation. AI is going to create more value when it sits with your connected workflows and your integrated systems. So let's walk through what it looks like across the tax workflow. So the workflow really begins with engaging your clients. So things like client collaboration tools can help automate document requests. They can classify your uploads for you, and it can streamline the engagement steps. Then the firm kind of moves into the tax preparation and review part. This is where the connected workflows can help the teams work more efficiently, right? So that means that you can leverage the documents that you get within your client collaboration tools. You can use AI and machine learning to get the data out of those documents and get it automatically into the tax compliance engine, right? Helping you gain that efficiency, gain minutes, sometimes hours of time on a tax return. Then the workload management starts to become more dynamic as firms can use things like automated schedulers, automated tasks assignment, and automated prioritization to help you balance that work in real time. So you can leverage AI to do all of that for you without having to lean on the partners for that prioritization, right? AI can look at who has done that work the fastest, who has done that work the most. They can look at what their schedule looks like, and they can help prioritize the work and the clients based off of the data that's available to that AI tool. Then we have that document intake and data extraction that we talked about. That's going to reduce that input time, and that is going to help support cleaner downstream tax preparation. And then finally, planning and advisory, right? And I don't really like how we kind of put this at the end, right? Because I think if you're looking at the tax workflow, it's not linear. It's actually a circle, right? Because planning can kind of go anywhere within that time, and it doesn't stop with that, right? So planning and advisory are going to become easier for your firm to adopt and more natural because you're going to leverage AI to surface those insights from the data that you already have moving for the workflow, right? So it's really cool. And I want to say to you that these things, like what I'm talking about right now, what we're showing on the screen, this isn't hypothetical, right? This isn't the future of tax. These things are already available and are being delivered today. And so the key takeaway here is that when you have these connected workflows, you can start improvements that will start to compound instead of like stalling out at one point in the process, right? And then this is where that intelligence layer is going to come into focus here. And so expert AI isn't just at one step, right? It's not like you get through this thing and then you click a button and say, okay, AI, what can you help me do here? It's going to show up throughout the entire process, right? It's going to help you draft communications in plain language to your customers. It extracts, categorizes, and tables very complex data. Like I said, it assists with staffing and scheduling and prioritization. It is then also going to answer really complex tax questions with, and this is key, verifiable sources, right? So we don't want to go to ChatGPT to ask complex tax questions, right? You want to make sure that you're using a tool that has verifiable sources. Additionally, throughout the entire tax workflow, AI can flag things that have changed. It can flag things that are missing, and it can flag when things just kind of like don't add up. The important thing to note here, and this is, I think, where some tax professionals can get a little bit scared, is that AI is not meant to replace professional judgment, and it's not going to. So we like to refer to it as human in the loop. So not human out of the loop, right? Human in the loop. So AI is going to help you make professional judgment more timely, and it's going to help make it scalable. It's going to bring issues forward faster so that you can spend more time kind of interpreting, reviewing, advising, and really making those final decisions as a decision maker and leader in your firm. But once again, this is going to work best when all of your data looks the same, right? All of your client data is the same, and you're using workflows that are integrated and already connected. So let's talk a little bit about CCH Access Intelligence and kind of what's in the market today. So these are several examples of how intelligence can show up in real tax work. So from things like document analysis, firms can upload K-1s, bank statements, brokerage, 1099s, and other source documents so that data can be extracted, categorized, and organized. When you're looking at research, staff can ask complex questions and receive answers that are grounded in authoritative context and sources that they can verify. Also, you can look at things like IRS notices, right? Intelligence can help triage the notice. It can help analyze the penalty basis and can help draft a response. When you're looking at things like broader data extraction, scanned binders or really complex client materials can become searchable and easier to analyze. So the thought line here is that intelligence really helps reduce the time spent organizing and interpreting the inputs so that professionals can focus attention on judgment and client service. So I'm going to go through this next slide kind of really quickly here, because I think it's important to share, but we are getting close to our time here and we still have one more polling question to do. So we talk a lot about efficiency here. So let's put some numbers to it, right? When AI reduces time spent on data collection, the impact really does add up. So on average, this model that we have in market today can help you reclaim nearly 1,000 hours per tax professional per year. That is roughly a 50% capacity gain without adding people. So there are real world examples of how we're using it today, and there are real world efficiency and capacity gains. So let's close out here with our last polling question. Isaac?
Okay, and the last CPE question is, what are you interested in learning more about? AI in your tax workflows, tax compliance software, cloud-based workflow automation, document management, and client collaboration tools, tax and business advisory software, AI-powered research solutions, or none? Your firm has everything it needs. Of course, if you have another suggestion, go ahead and put it down in the question box. Stephanie, if you can wrap it up real quick, I do have a few closing remarks. And I do thank everybody for coming to join us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here today. And please, if you have any questions, use the Q&A box. If we can't get to them right now, we will certainly reach out to you via email. And once again, happy to be here and glad to be a part of this today.
All right. Thank you. And thanks everyone for attending this discussion. And thanks to WoltersK for sponsoring this topic for CPE credit. You can visit WoltersK.com or CCH.com for more information. For participating in today's event, you will receive the CPE certificate in the email you used to register, but also be sure to check your spam folder. If you have any questions about CPE or for the host about this topic, contact us at editor@cpapracticeadvisor.com. We also have a few more CPE webcast events coming up, and you can see them at the resources tab on our website, cpapracticeadvisor.com. The audio in this CPE event will end now.